All right. Project Herpetoculture, episode 30. Before I introduce our guest, I just want to do like a little bit of housekeeping per usual. I'm Philip Leitz, joined as always by the one and only enigmatic, charismatic Roy Arthur Blodgett, who, despite what you may have heard, does in fact live in the UK. And I want to give a little space here for our sponsors. That's Q to Charlie. And then I want to note that we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/project herpetoculture. We very much appreciate all of the people who want to support us there. Every tiny little bit helps. So it's something we really value. So thanks to everybody over in that space. And then we also just want to give a shout out to Dylan at the Animals at Home Network and the Animals at Home podcast, the GOAT, for hosting our show. He's the dude. We really appreciate that guy. But with all of that out of the way, for some reason, that always feels like the most, like, I don't know what it is about that, but for doing that little intro spiel just feels like we got to just get through this. I hate it. I hate doing it. I don't know why. But with that said, our guest is Heather Moye. Heather, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Heck yeah. Awesome. So, before we hit record, we were talking about going through TSA with Ron.
Oh.
So,
so Alan Rapace was on recently, you guys, it just aired. And so we watched it, and he was talking about Ron's dislike for flying. So I was cracking up during that whole segment because trying to get him on a plane to go to Tenley has been, it's always a battle. Like, it's a battle. So he'll be like, nope, we're going to drive. Like, no, we're not driving. It's a long drive. Just get on a plane. We can be there in a couple of hours, get off, get set up. Like, we're here. We're able to not have people at the house for 2 extra days. We're able to save 2 days on the road. It's, less exhausting, and so I'm like, no, we're gonna fly. So it's always like this battle. It's like this whole, I'm just expecting it. And so the first time that I booked a flight for us to Tenley, he was horrible through TSA, just horrible. He just complained and was just like, I mean, he was just pulling a Ron. I mean, he was so intense and so crabby and just like, this is, blah, 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 and da, 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 going on and on and on and on and on. I'm like, can we just be quiet, okay? Because you're creating a scene. Like, don't say anything. Just don't say anything. He keeps grumbling. Guess who gets pulled over at TSA? Not him, me. I get searched. I have all my stuff taken apart. I was like, ugh. So anyway, so that was my first experience with him flying, and ever since then, it's usually a battle. He just doesn't like flying. He doesn't like being
wow.
off the ground. So, but every time we come back home, he's like, "We need to do that next time because that's much better." Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's my. It's always a. He gets really stressed out before he flies, and
Oh,
I
that
make
poor
fun of
guy.
him. So yeah, it's
Of
good.
course. You
Yeah.
can't let him live that down. You just can't. He
Oh
deserves.
no, I
You
pick
gotta
at him
you
every
gotta keep
chance
him
I
humble.
get. Because I mean, I get it. Like, I mean, I grew up flying all the time. So I frequently, when we went on vacation somewhere, it wasn't unusual for us to get on a plane. So it's something I've done my whole life. For him, obviously it hasn't. And so his flying experience has been pretty limited.
Do you
So
do you do you think he would freak out extra if it was an international flight, or does it matter?
yes,
Yeah.
for
Okay.
sure.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah.
So
I
note to
mean,
self,
he's
I'm
gotten used to the Tenley one now. Tenley's only a couple hours, so it's not, to go to Chicago is not a big deal. But I still, he still grumbles every time. I'm
so
like,
if we want to get him on a flight to maybe to the Ham show, or if we want to take him international herping, he's gonna lose his mind.
we've talked about doing stuff like that, but I just don't know. I mean, he probably would for the experience, but yeah,
Yeah. Like
yeah, for
if
sure.
we we said, hey, it's going to be Alan, Philippe, me, Roy, you, and Ron. I mean, what is he just not going to get on the plane? Come on. He's going to
I
have to,
mean,
right?
if I buy the tickets, then it's kind
Oh,
of like it's got to happen.
yeah. Yeah.
So
No, it's
yeah,
got to happen.
That's the move.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool. That's good to know for the future.
We just
yeah.
send the
Okay.
invite to Heather, and Heather will take care of the rest.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty
yeah.
much. Yeah. Yeah. I
Right.
mean,
Poor
it's
guy.
funny because here's this guy that I would watch him with no no hesitation at all to go in and handle somebody's crocodile monitor or whatever, an animal that he wasn't even familiar with, and the stories of his childhood, some of the things that he's done as a child, or I'm sorry, that he did in his younger years. And then I'm like, but you won't get on a plane, like, really? But
Yeah.
so anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna be in I'm gonna he's gonna be like, I can't believe you said that.
We're all going to be in
Anyway,
trouble. If we all disappear,
yeah,
then our listeners will know what happened.
yeah, exactly.
I feel like if Ron's not a little bit grumpy with me and what like it's maybe like I gotta try a little harder. Um, okay, so with that out of the way, I really wanted to touch on that just because
Yeah,
hey, listen, he started it. He started it with the whole when he did the his first show here on this podcast, when he was like giving Alan grief about being the spoiled little rich boy. I was like, all right,
right,
game on, dude. It's
right.
it's it's time, which
Yep,
was which was amazing, and I
yep.
just love that. So Alan was also talking about doing like a combo show, so maybe we
Actually,
might have to.
that would be very entertaining because those two
Yeah,
just absolutely just, yeah,
We got to do
back
it.
and
hell
forth.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
awesome. I mean, it's all in good fun too, but it's hilarious. They just really just rag on each other hard. It's funny.
Right on. Well, again, I don't want to spend too much time on that. It was just like a fun
Yeah,
little
yeah, just a
side
little
gag.
story.
Yeah, just a little thing. But one of the first questions I have for you is, can you tell us a little bit about how you got your start in herpetoculture? And I don't necessarily mean like as a business or anything. I mean, like, has it been with you since you were a kid? Has it always been something
Yeah.
that interested you? Yeah.
So yeah, well, okay. So when I was a little kid, I was the little girl that was like running through the woods, climbing trees, catching things, bring them in the house. So my mom comes up to me one day, and she's talking to me, and that's what she used to do when she was a little girl. So she used to go romping around Texas and catching this, that, and the other. So and then let it go. And her father, my grandfather, actually made her a little critter keeper, a little wood and wire critter keeper. And so she gave that to me when I was little, when I was
Oh, wow.
probably
Oh,
6 or 8 years old. So and so I've done things like I brought a king snake on the school bus one time because I wanted to let it go in a quiet place. We had this little thing called the quiet place at the elementary school I went to. And so it was supposed to be like a little refuge area for animals. And we had like, lots of different, whatever. Anyway, I thought that was a good idea. The bus driver didn't. I got kicked off. So, I mean, that's the extent of my I was catching and releasing, but I was really interested more so in as I got older, I was gearing more towards marine biology actually. But um, my my first husband, him and I got together when I was pretty young. I was in college, and so we got together, and at that point in time it was kind of like, okay, we both couldn't afford to go to school. We couldn't afford to have both of us in school. We had to be, somebody had to be making a living, this, that, and the other. And I actually had already been introduced to the jewelry industry and had been in it for a number of years. And so I started kind of climbing the ladder with that and getting into management and stuff. So by the time he graduated, I just, I was making really good money. I liked my job. I had been doing it a long time. Um, I was selling high-end jewelry, and I enjoyed it. So there was a lot of hours though involved. I worked a lot of hours, 70 hours a week, a lot of times. So, but things change and things happen, and we ended up getting a divorce. And the next individual that came up and kind of unfortunately told me what I wanted to hear, which wasn't good. We all have those little like rebound relationships. Anyway, he wasn't the best person in the world. he wasn't a good person. He couldn't hold down a job, and he was manipulative. Literally, by the end of it all, I had to start completely over with my life. I mean, I
Mm.
literally everything was burned to the ground, and I had to start again. So, but when I would be at work, and I was still in the jewelry industry, he decided that he wanted to. I had bought him a scorpion, and then I bought him a ball python. Anyway, then he got the bug, and he was like, "Oh, I can buy and resell animals, and I can go to these shows." So he formed a business and used my credit card and started going down south all the time, and visiting Strictly and all the others. And I would come home, and there would be all of these whatever you could get at an importer. And so yeah, it was a crash course for me, because although I enjoyed playing with all of the critters when I was little, I had not continued that. I wasn't a lifer. So it was me staying up long hours and figuring out, okay, let's figure out this species. What does it need to be healthy? What do I need to do for it? Do I need to deworm it? How do I need to take care of it? So I was just getting a crash course in like all of these reptile species. So and setting them up right, because that wasn't really his thing. So his thing was, well, he was pretty much he was not a good person. He was somewhat of a scammer. Um,
Mm.
so anyway, one day my dad and my brother-in-law came. I said I've had enough, and they came with a U-Haul, and I packed up all my son's things. I packed up my animals, and I left, and I started over again pretty much. So I didn't actually form fairy tale, although I was breeding for several years dragons, because I liked the frill. So for most of the stuff that he was bringing in, the stuff that I really enjoyed was the frill dragons, the uromastyx, and the bearded dragons. Those were the ones that I liked. My affordability and what I could do, I wanted to do it right. I didn't always like what I saw that came in from various sources. Sometimes the animals were great, sometimes they weren't. But if I sell something, whether it was in the jewelry industry or whether it's in selling reptiles or whatever, I have to believe in it. I have to enjoy it. I
Mhm.
have to know that the
Mhm.
animal is good. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I can't sell something that I don't firmly have faith in. So
Mm.
so anyway, I wanted to get my own dragons and grow them up and kind of start out that way, so that I wasn't having to rely on anybody else, or bring it in from anywhere else and question whether it was healthy or not, or this, that, and the other. So I bought babies and grew them up myself. So I started on that process. And um, when the day came for me to pick up and move, I took my animals with me. And then after everything was done, I formed Fairy Tale in 2009. Um, so yeah, so
That's
that's
great.
kind of how I ended up. And for a long time, I worked full time and bred dragons. So I did that until 2017. I did
Mm.
both. So I kept employment and this on the side. This was, I would work all week, and then on the weekends I would do the expos. Um,
Wow.
so so I did both for quite a few years. Um, but yeah, so yeah, when I met I have a daughter too. I have a son that's almost 25, and then my daughter just turned 11. Um, her dad was not the jerk, just so you know. So that was my third marriage. Anyway, but but yeah, so both of my kids have grown up around dragons. And then my daughter has been exposed to far more than my son. So I mean, I kept some additional species, but for them when my son was younger, well, I mean, obviously when I was with my second husband, but there was quite a bit in the house. But as far as what I was breeding and stuff, I didn't really start messing with other species until later. But you can't though either. You can only spread yourself so thin. So you have kids
Right.
and you have a full-time job, and then you also have a little side business, and it keeps you going. It keeps you busy. Keeps you really busy. So
Right. So what was the moment, or was there a specific moment, or was it gradual when you realized like, oh, I could do just this? You know, it's like I could just do the reptiles, or had that always been kind of a goal, or did you know, how did all that come about for you?
It was always a goal, but it is difficult. And anybody that is starting out, you know, anybody that really starts out in this industry is doing something else already, you know, and this is kind of a side hobby for them. So, and it's scary to go from it's quite a step to say, okay, I'm going to take this from part-time where I can only do so much into full-time. I mean, you have to rely upon yourself for everything. So I'm not getting a weekly check from an employer. I'm not getting, nobody's paying my health insurance. Nobody's, you know what I'm saying? That's all on me. So, you know, that takes, that's not something that I certainly had any interest in doing early, because I wanted to have contacts. I wanted to be known within the industry, have a reputation as so that when you have the ups and downs of the industry that come, that I'm able, you know, that I'm better in a better position. I mean, stuff can happen to anybody, but I'm in a better position to kind of handle those waves a little bit. So, I mean, I started off really slow when I started breeding the dragons. I had probably 6 or 7 adults at that time that I'd grown up, but I only did one pair my first season because I wanted to get the experience. I wanted to get my feet wet and kind of figure out, because you can read all kinds of stuff, and you learn as much as you possibly can. You research, as much as you possibly can, but to get the hands-on experience, I knew that I didn't want to be overwhelmed with 300 animals that'll be mouths to feed and trying to figure stuff out, you know. So because obviously dragons are very prolific and they produce, you know, there's you do one pairing and you can get quite a few. So I wanted to be really responsible with that, and I wanted that to not be a burden on me, but a joy, you know, an experience that I could enjoy and learn from. So that's what I did. So the first year I only paired up one pair. The second year and the third year I only did 3 pairs. And then my fourth year, I went up to 5 pairs and just kind of like ramped up from there. So, you know, it was kind of it was a slower process, but I got really comfortable with it, very efficient. I knew what I was doing before I got in over my head. You know, pet stores knew that I had a quality animal, that they were healthy, and that I took care of them. You know, started
Yeah.
getting known at some of the shows and stuff. So I
Yeah.
just feel like for anybody starting out, that's a really good way to go. It's
Yeah.
a
Yeah, it's
lot
so
more
interesting.
comfortable. It's a much more comfortable ride. And so, and you can get your feet wet and you can decide, do I really, really love this? Do I really like this? Or is it just okay? So,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's really
and I
interesting.
really, really liked it, obviously. So I stuck with it.
That's a necessity. You got to like it, right?
You have to love it. Yeah. And as particularly, and now obviously I've worked with a lot of different species. And the dragons are by far the most labor intensive,
Hmm.
by far.
Mm.
They're very labor intensive. They're very expensive to produce. You have to have a lot of space,
Hmm.
and they are very time consuming.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
That's
mouths to feed
yeah.
too. They've got big appetites.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do. Yep. And you don't
Shoot.
have like the crested geckos, you know, I'll have like 4 or 5, you know, hatch out in a week. The bearded
Right.
dragons, it's like, fellow, you know, you can get 30 in one clutch. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
totally,
I started
totally
out
different.
with dragons and I remember sometimes I would get 34 from 30 eggs because I'd have a couple twins in there, you know, and I'd just be like, oh, okay, even more. It's their amazingly fecund little lizards, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I this is kind of a totally left field question, but I'm kind of curious. Was there anything that you took kind of from your time in the jewelry industry that
Yeah.
was helpful in coming
Oh yeah, for sure.
into the
Customer
herpetoculture
service,
industry? Yeah,
customer
okay.
service,
Ah.
big time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wondered about
customer
that because
service, how to relate to people, you know, how to interact with people. So in the jewelry industry, so that one of the things that I love about this industry is I literally wait. I assist people from all walks of life.
Mhm.
Our industry attracts everyone. So from everywhere. I mean, it's amazing to me. I love that because I get to meet a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds from a lot of different places, from a lot of different cultures, from a lot of different idea sets. And I really enjoy that. So, and I love that part of it. In the jewelry industry, obviously my clientele would be, their income levels would be, you know, middle class and up type of, and a higher income level. So, but it was still an incredible experience to meet different personalities and see how people interact with each other. And I had quite a few, and I had a, not quite a few, but I mean, I had a decent number of employees too. So, you know, trying to get everybody to kind of get along and you know, work out their differences and understand that, you know, that everybody's on the same team and that we're not always going to see eye to eye and that differences are okay. That's, you know, where a lot of growth can come from and stuff like that. So yeah, so the 20 years that I spent in jewelry was really was very helpful for me in that regard, for the people skills. So, because I'm an introvert, I'm a hardcore introvert. So when I get in my zone, like when I'm at one of the shows, I'm okay because that's my happy place and I'm okay with that. When I'm speaking to somebody one-on-one, I'm okay with that. So, the podcasts and things like that, I'm not going to lie, they terrify me, but you know, I'm just not used to that yet. But that's from a lack of experience, right? I mean, when you don't have the experience, the more experience you have in something, the more you get comfortable with it. So, but anyway, so I'm kind of talking all over the board, but yeah, I definitely learned a lot from the jewelry industry. And it was kind of funny because some of my clients that were like some of my regulars, they would be like, they would ask to see the dragons and ask to see, and they were like, you do what again? And so when I first started in this, you know, keeping in mind it was before, like, fairy tale started in 2009, but I had been breeding for a number of years prior to that. And so anyway, they were like, show me pictures, and they're like, oh, and they're like, what is that again? And so Audemars Piguet, which is a watch brand, they did an ad campaign with bearded dragons, and I think that was in like 2009 or 2010. And I was like, ha, see, you know,
see, here it
like
is.
like this is what so it was really cool. Like, to me it was very cool. But yeah, it was interesting because, you know, going to the grocery store back then and picking up greens and stuff versus now, and the cashier saying, what are you doing with all this? And then them saying, what? What? They're like, what do you, ew, you know, like their response would be like repulsive, or they had no idea what a bearded dragon was, or they were like totally just like, they didn't know what to say. They didn't know whether to be grossed out, whether they should take my money or not. I mean, they were just like, some of them were very uncomfortable. They were either fascinated or uncomfortable. So it was pretty rare that somebody would be like, oh my God, I know what they are, da 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 da. And think about it, when you really think about it, it wasn't that long ago. And nowadays, then everybody's like, oh my gosh, I have one. My cousin has one. I know you. My aunt bought one from you. Or, you know, so it's really funny to see the changes. I mean, reptiles have really become very accepted within the mainstream nowadays. So back then, you know, kids that were buying a dragon from me had done, you know, had begged the parents for 3 years and had done a ridiculous amount of research and, you know, up and down the other, and were fully prepared for the most part. There was only a few questions that, you know, obviously I would kind of help them with initially, but they really had gone in deep and done the studies. And then nowadays I still get that, but then I also get some people where, you know, kind of like, okay, well, let's talk about this. You know, have you done your homework on this? Do you know what this entails? Do you know what kind of care we're looking at? Do you know? Yeah. So it's interesting to see the evolution of all this. So
yeah, that's fascinating. I would not have even thought to think about like the way your clientele have changed over the years. Like that never would have crossed my mind at all. But that's crazy.
Yeah. And like I say, I mean, I still have, like, you know, the hardcore little kid that's like the next. In fact, right now I'm actually, so I don't typically board animals because obviously that puts my colony at risk and so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. So, and I don't have the space for it. And I just, I don't feel comfortable with it. But I'll recommend places and so on and so forth. Well, so I'll tell you one client story. So I had this little girl who would catch to Christmas before last, so that would have been 2021. Her mom had contacted me, and her daughter, they had moved here from Alabama, and her daughter catches everything in the yard, like all the anoles. She's bringing snakes inside, like she's just
Mm-hmm.
hardcore. I love it. Anyway, they were she really wanted a bearded dragon, so we had long conversations about dragons, what it entailed, what the responsibilities were. So anyway, she selected a dragon. His name is Figment. So they're moving now. Her father had a change of work, and so they're moving to Arizona, but they're having to stay here. Mom with the two kids is staying here for 5 weeks, and they have a cat. And their hotel room that they had to stay in because their house closed, it sold much faster than anticipated, which is great. Was supposed to have like a door on the bathroom, and it doesn't. And anyway, mom was like in tears. I have Figment right now.
Uh-huh.
So
That's awesome
Figment
though,
is
the real
Figment's
relationships.
in my living room right now. But it's really cool though, because and that is one of my favorite things about this industry is the relationships. I have met so many people, like I said, from that do I mean it's crazy. I mean, I have so many friends that if not for this industry, I never would have met them, and
Yeah.
all of these wonderful people out there and all of these moms that I've become friends with over the years, and the kids that grow,
Yeah.
I watch their kids grow up and get their second and third dragon from me over the years. I mean, it's really cool. It's you become a part of their life, like you become
Mm-hmm.
a memory, you become part of events for them, events of their childhood. And
Yeah.
um I don't think sometimes people don't really think about that. I think, the impact that we
Yeah.
have. So, and
Yeah.
you want it to
Yeah.
be a good one. You want you want that memory to be a good one. When I get the films and I get the videos from the kids and seeing that and having the kids contact me over the years, Miss Heather, I have a question. I'm like, okay, what you got going on? Tell me about it. What's going on? Well, he's doing XYZ or she didn't, da 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 da. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, let's work through this. And,
Mm-hmm.
I ask a series of questions and we figure out what's going on. So, but it's pretty,
Yeah.
it's, it's an, it's, it, I don't know how to, it's an amazing feeling to realize that you have had such an, you've had an impact on others'
Mm-hmm.
lives. you
Mm-hmm.
know
Yeah.
I don't know. So because for
Yeah.
a lot of people this is their first pet. It's kind of like the entry doorway. The bearded dragons are kind of an entry point. So
Oh
I
yeah.
work with
Yeah.
obviously the other stuff now, and I love them. But and everybody's like, "Are you going to stop breeding dragons?" I'm like, "Nope, they'll be with
Mm-hmm.
me for ever and always." I mean, I may get to
Mm-hmm.
where I only have 5 pair, but I'll always have them because I have a special attachment to them, and the relationships that I built through because of them have been incredible, and they helped me through horrible times when I was going through, like I said, that second marriage was absolutely horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And when I lost everything, they were important enough for me to not lose them, and I took them with me. And so all those long hours of scrubbing and cleaning and you know
Oh yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
gave me the ability to just kind of like work through all of that pile of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense. And
Yeah. That's
really, uh, can I go?
no, no, no. You go.
Okay.
Go, bro. It's all good.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense to me. Like one thing that's always stood out to me from, I've heard you on a couple podcasts in the past, and also just like looking through your social media and stuff. It's just your customer commitment, and just like the way you follow through. And I think that's I'm sad to say that stands out as kind of unique in herpetoculture, and it really it's I like that it also kind of dovetails with the jewelry industry thing and the customer service background, and that's actually something that we have in common. I grew up in the jewelry industry. My dad's a goldsmith, and
Oh,
I
really?
grew up, yeah, I grew up in an estate jewelry store and
Oh, you know
still
what? I
work
think I
there.
actually did hear that on the podcast. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so
yeah.
I still do that a little bit here and there. And um I totally get what you mean about just like
Eh,
the regular
Well, and
customers and like those relationships you get, and it's
yeah,
intimate.
and yeah, and in the industry, in the jewelry industry, there is a personal commitment. There's a connection because you're
Totally.
part of
Yeah.
a memory. So you're
Yeah.
part of that engagement or that wedding or, you
Exactly.
know, the birth of a baby or an anniversary. I mean, there are usually jewelry, there's usually an event attached to
Uh-huh.
it. And so I'm covered in goosebumps right now because then when you go into like, you know, herpetoculture and you're going into like the
Yeah.
child's first pet and their first experience, um, you know, I mean, it's so cool to get these like videos, you know, on a birthday,
Yeah.
and the kid has no idea, or to meet them and you know, meet them to the locals that I meet up with to pick to a dragon pickup, and the excitement on their faces, and even adults, you know, like I'm a kid too. I mean, I'm 50 years old, but I still consider
Mm-hmm.
myself a kid, and I get excited too. I mean, sometimes when I get a box in, I'm like, you know, um, so yeah, it's an awesome, it's an emotional business. It's a business of
Yeah.
emotions. It's not just about you know, it's not just about the animal too. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
human emotions that you're dealing with. So
Yeah.
it's
It's so
a
true.
yeah.
I don't think I would have fully made that connection on my own without this, this conversation,
Yeah.
but it's so true. I totally get that. It's the same thing, when you get you shepherd someone through the process of selecting an engagement ring, and then like
Mm-hmm.
you get the text, a week later, and they're like, she said yes, and it's
Exactly,
like totally
exactly.
a
You know,
similar
and then
thing.
you
Yeah.
see them come in like 5 years or 3 years later with their first baby, and you know,
Yeah.
you
Oh
see
yeah.
them like
It's
you
so
watch
wild.
it, and it's just yeah, it's just an amazing thing. So I love that,
So
and
cool.
so that's very important to me. So and with that though, you know, especially in our industry, it can be really difficult too. It's challenging
Hmm.
because especially with social media. I handled it all fine before social media, but with social media, everybody has access to you or thinks they have access to you at all times. And that makes it really tough because you have to balance like your personal life, your, you know, you have to balance, make sure that your animals are cared for, that your family is cared for, that, you know, for me, that my daughter's homework is done. You have to service first and foremost, in my opinion, and what I've always done is take care of my clients that have already purchased from me if they have a care
Hmm.
question. To me, that's the most important thing. It's the after
Mm.
this, you know, after they've gone home with the new pet, is making sure that that you devote your time to them. So, and make sure that everything is, you know, if they have a question, that you're there to bullet point, you know, to target and figure out what's going on, and to help them through that, or we need to do this, we need to do that. Anyway, um, I think that's incredibly important. But we all, at the end of the day, I mean, we all have the same amount of time,
Yep.
and that time runs out, and we have to divide our time appropriately. So I think finding the thing that I struggle with, and I still really haven't come up with a really viable solution, because you know, somebody, most people understand but a lot of people don't, is how do you how do you like, balancing all that is tough. Like balancing
Hmm.
all that is really tough. So like I intentionally, for example, during the height of season, I'll still only list 5 to 8 dragons a week up online. That's it. I don't care if I could sell 30 of them. I only sell 5 to 8. The
Hmm.
reason why I do that is because I know that I can devote the time to those 5 to 8 people that are going to need extra assistance, like the first week, and then for the first couple weeks that they have it, and that I could respond to them via text, you know, because I have all of my clients, which Ron yells at me about, they have my cell number so that they can
Hmm.
text me. He's like, I don't know why you do that. Um, but this is why I do that. Um,
I do the
so that
same
they can
thing.
send me a text and ask me, you know, questions. If it's an emergency, I get right back to them. If it's, whatever, then, and I always tell them, I'm like, look, sometimes my phone goes ding, 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 ding. We all get solicitation and everything else. I'm like, if I accidentally miss you for some reason, if I don't respond to you within like, a few hours, 12 hours, whatever, if it's an emergency, an hour, just say hi. So you bump you back up. So I make sure I see it and I can get to you. Cause sometimes it's just like, I open it up and then the phone rings or my daughter says something. It's like squirrel, and then you go off and then you don't mean to, but you forget, so, but to that person, you want to make sure that they know, hey, it's okay to just say, hey. So I've got that. I figured that part out really well. And I feel like I have really good balance in that. The problem that I have is, like emails, on the front end can be pretty intense, and so finding balance with that can be a little bit challenging. And that's where we all have our like superpowers in the areas that we're great and the areas that we struggle a little bit. That for me is a little bit of a struggle because sometimes you have to filter out the spam. You have to filter out a lot, and you know what I mean. You have to filter out a lot. So um, and sometimes people are asking you 30 questions, which in a response, like I want to give them a response, but you end up with literally a book, like responding. It's like, why don't you just call me? So, but anyway, so I do struggle with a little bit with that, but that's why I limit my retail. So to try to keep that under control. So
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can very much relate to everything you
it gets
just said.
overwhelming, with the social media thing. I mean, it's been like everything in life has its blessings and its curses. Everything has, and it's all trying to keep it in balance. And I love what social media has done because it's really connected us, and there's a lot more information out there and stuff like that. But with social media, some things aren't so great that have come with it. And sometimes people have, like, I love to be available to people to help people, but I mean, like I said, I'm one person, so that's always kind of interesting trying to find that balance too when somebody's asking you questions. And with new keepers and people that are pet keepers and stuff, then I'll spend a ridiculous amount of time on the phone with them or in text. For breeders, I do spend time with them, but I can't spend time with all of them, and I kind of expect you to do some of the work yourself like I did. So I'm not there to fill in all the blanks for you because you saw my social media page and we've never spoken before. Like I want to help everybody, but I mean, there's a lot of information out there. If you ask me an intelligent question, then of course I'm going to answer it. But if you ask me something that is like basic that you should know as a keeper before a breeder, those end up going a little bit more, those end up kind of, I guess you could say, back burner. Like, I don't know. I hate saying that, but
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
we just, I mean, everybody has, we all have to be to find balance, and that can get tough. And I don't like disappointing people. So I always hate that part, but that's just kind of that's the negative on it. But
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean it's one of those things where and again, I've not been doing this as long as you have, and I don't have the same sort of scope of customer base that you do, but I have it's a real struggle sometimes to, like you're saying, to strike that balance between, okay, look, I can't be, I'm not Google. You know what I mean? Like I'm
right.
not I'm not Google. You can do
But
Yeah.
you're
and it's
kind of
gonna be important.
Euromastics Google.
Yeah, and if you
Yeah,
find
no,
something on Google and you want click, because Google's not always right, we all know that. But I mean,
yeah,
if you need
right.
clarification on something, say, hey, this is the
Yeah.
research I've done. This is, not, you know, my girl is gravid. What do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
right. Right. Well,
I get that.
and
I get that weekly. Like I get
No,
that so
yeah.
oh,
much, and I just want to pull my hair out. I'm like, she's gravid, and you don't know what to do. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And if I don't respond, then I'm rude. But does that comes at the cost of me not making sure that my daughter has dinner on the table, that that we're not able to spend quality time together, that my daughter is going to grow up and I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, but I was trying to help somebody who wouldn't
Yeah.
do anything to help
Yeah.
themselves. Like, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
be rude, but I mean, that's the reality of it, you know? So you try to
Yeah.
strike balance, um, and that can
And
be a little tough.
well, yeah, and yeah, totally. And there's also this other phenomenon too, which is, um, people will suggest things, and I'm sure people have suggested this sort of thing to you. It's like, oh, you should make a YouTube channel where you have all the answers to all the questions that you get. And it's like, okay, I have something to that effect, right? Like I've got a YouTube channel, I've got my gram where I post a bunch of crap, I got a Patreon, I got care guides. I put as much content out as I can. And I still get questions from people who just disregard all of that available information. And they'll say, hey, they ask me one of those questions that you're talking about, which is it's like, I'm not here. That's not what I am.
Mhm.
I have a link.
Right.
It has all of my stuff in it. You will find the answer to your question there. And then people will either ask another question on top of that after looking through, finding the answer to their question, and then asking something different that was also in the care guide, or they will just totally disregard and be like, well, can't you just type it for me? I just asked you. And it's like, well, sorry, dude. Like,
Yeah.
that's not what I'm here for. Like, I'm a person, I'm not a bot, you
Yeah.
know?
So
Mhm.
I had and that took me with social media coming into play, and with me being around as long as I have. It took me a while to because I'm a perfectionist.
Mhm.
And it took me a while to be okay with having, some people maybe being upset with me because their expectations of me are unreasonable. um you
Yeah.
know it's just
Yeah.
one of those things. So the
Right.
information's out there.
Yeah.
And
So,
yeah, I've had people do so. Why don't you do a YouTube? Because I'm an introvert. I don't do YouTube. I work with
well,
the
and it's,
animals. That's why I work with the animals.
This is the
yes.
So
battle that I'm
yeah,
constantly facing
I like the
too.
one-on-one. What's that? Oh
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
Like I have ambition to do it, and then it's just so unnatural for me,
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't
I'm
come
so
easy for me
introverted,
at
and
all. Yeah.
this is
Right.
enough of a stretch for me, being a podcast co-host, and I can only do it because Phil is so outgoing and I can just blend
Oh,
in sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
bullshit. No way, dude. Like your hat jacket combination makes the show. I'm in a I'm in a I'm in a jujitsu hoodie in my bedroom. You're in like this professional hat, coat collar with your sick terrariums in the back. You're the one putting a professional face on this. I'm just loud. um,
I got to do something to make up
okay,
for it.
so yeah.
What's
Well,
that?
thanks for
I got to do something to make up for the quietness.
Oh, whatever.
um, okay, so there's some stuff in there that I'd like to kind of dive into a little bit more, because one of the things that I've admired about the work you do for so long is the perfectionism that you just talked about. And I feel like uh 80% of what I comment on your Instagram is like, damn, that's like the best looking dragon. Like, and I'm not talking about their color, right? Because their color is always amazing with everything you
Right.
post. But I'm just like, damn, that's like the sickest head structure. Oh, damn, that's like the coolest body shape I've ever seen on a dragon. So,
Hmm.
like, you have such a strong dedication to the craft. And this is one of the reasons I want to break this apart more and talk about and ask about like your motivations and your influences and your inspirations in that regard, is because I feel like what you're doing is like setting an example for all of herpetoculture in terms of like what people can strive towards trying to do, because there are so many people like the ex of yours that you mentioned who are like scammers or like near scammers, right?
Right.
Who people who you know I I have a few of those people that come to mind right now who I know are out there doing their thing, selling animals that have problems, just trying to, flipping animals just because they got to get that next, they can mark $100
Right.
because they've been in the industry for 20 years and the other person, doesn't know what they have, or, you name it.
Right. Right.
And I feel like, part of why one of the reasons why we want to have you on the show is because you're out there setting such a phenomenal example in that regard. So and I may have to, I mean, I know I'm probably asking too many questions in one bundle because that's kind of what I tend to do, but like,
I never
um,
noticed.
yeah, yeah, well, that's nice because I do it a lot. But
Oh, I noticed. I was being sarcastic. Anyway, that's good.
see, that just went right over my head.
Roasted.
But no, it was good. That got me. But so what were there influences or inspirations that you can point to? I know you mentioned the jewelry industry, but were there other herpetoculturists that motivated you in that regard? And then, yeah, maybe start with
So I'm
that.
gonna say, and I know this is unusual, probably a response if you ask this question kind of across the board. My answer to that, my honest answer to that is honestly no. Um,
Mhm.
my drive and my inspiration from everything is, I mean, my family, I have a very tight family. So and when I was growing up, my parents were very my father was pretty strict, but he did it for a reason because he wanted his girls to be successful. He didn't want us to, to suffer or anything like that, but he was strict. But he really instilled in us a work ethic and to always do your best and to always do the best that you possibly can and put your best out there, and so that's pretty much where my drive comes from, and that's so I really haven't followed any lead per se. I mean, there's a lot of people in the industry that I love and that I respect, but I mean, I really haven't followed the industry for any leads on any of that. That's just kind of through my own experiences, through how I was raised, and 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 then also like what I do. It's really really important to me. Like I'm super, I'm very I can be very much of a perfectionist because I don't ever want anything to go wrong. Like I told Ron a long time ago, and we were talking about this subject, and he was like, "Tell me why." Da 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 da. And so I said, for me, it's when I list a dragon, for example, for sale, to be sold, I don't know where that animal is going. When I initially list it, where is it going? Is it going to somebody that has 10 years experience? Is it going to go to a breeder? Is it going to a kid that's been researching for 3 years and saving all their money and this is their first pet? So I want that animal to be in the best possible shape possible, to live as long as they possibly can, and to have the best start possible, before it goes from my hands into theirs. Because I absolutely would crush me to feel responsible, to feel to have anything happen that was a result of something that I did. That bothers me. I can't. Um, that's why I really, that's why I really try to make sure that everything that I'm doing is spot on and that I'm not being irresponsible with my pairings and that I'm not listing things that shouldn't be listed and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because that kid, I mean, that's an important animal to that kid. 40 years from now, that kid's still going to remember their first bearded dragon. They're still going to remember their first reptile pet. I want that experience to be a positive one, not to be a negative one. I want that experience to have gone well where they had the guidance that they needed, that they had somebody who's willing to chat with them after they spent 100, because I mean my dragons, like a lot of them will sell for 125 or $150, and I have spent sometimes upwards of 5, 6, 7, 8 hours with people, and that's
Mhm.
okay if it's for the right reasons. you know
Yeah.
so um so I want that animal to have the best head start possible so that it can go somewhere else and thrive, right out of the box, be okay. And that I don't have to worry so much. So,
Yeah. Wow, that's great. That's so cool because I feel like that not only that sets so many good examples, right? So it's setting an example for the young people who you're sort of stewarding into herpetoculture. It sets an example to show like how well someone can operate in the space and why all these other shysters who are like fucking off and doing terrible shit with their animals and treating their customers terribly, like why they're not going to be able to get away with that for for a lot longer.
right.
It sets a great example to non-herpetoculturists, like people who aren't in the trade, because they can see, the first glimpse they're going to get if they see what you're doing is going to be like, oh wow, this is someone who takes what they're doing very seriously and works their ass off to really like take it to the next level and like do the right thing. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's fantastic. Like, I'm psyched that you're out there doing it. So with some of that is sort of like the background. There's a term you've used a few times that is something that maybe it's like a little unfamiliar to me, and that's conformation.
Conformation,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So can you like elaborate on what that means and then like how it applies to the dragons?
So yeah, so like in the dog and for dog breeders and stuff, they
Mm-hmm.
talk about conformation more, when they're going through like competitions and so on and so forth. But how the animal is structured. So how the animal is structured to me is very important. You can pick up early signs of inbreeding depression. You can pick up all kinds of things if you're kind of aware of that and you're looking for that. But to me, I have a tendency to pick that out before anything else. So I will go for an animal that I feel is well balanced and has nice structure, a nice head structure, nice body shape, doesn't have any pinching at the ribs and things like that. I'd rather select my holdbacks with less color than maybe one that had more color that I noticed some things that bothered me. So
Mm.
um, that's
And
that kind of just goes into like the longevity of your projects too. So I think a lot of times um, those that are less experienced, or maybe they don't care, I don't know, maybe
Mm-hmm.
both. I think oftentimes it's just a lack of experience,
mm-hmm.
that they select animals for the wrong reasons. So they'll
Mm-hmm.
select an animal based on color only without factoring in anything else. And so, you end up taking um, aspects of an animal and pushing that further down the line, so the body types get shorter and shorter and shorter, or the heads get smaller and smaller and smaller, or you're continuously
Yeah.
passing on a massive underbite or overbite, so
Mm.
structurally it's just not, I don't know, it's part of the balance, it's there should be balance. And I look at an animal and I'm like, nope. Like that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look balanced to me. Like I see some of the stuff, obviously scrolling on Instagram or whatever. I mean, I see some breeders doing some amazing stuff and they're doing great work. And then I see others and I'm like, you know, like, you see a clutch of babies and you're like, that's not hitting it. I wish you'd go back
Mm-hmm.
to the drawing board on that. And oftentimes they don't even see it. They don't even realize what they've got in front of them, um, and what's wrong. And so sometimes I used to kind of want to, like, I would like, there's like little tagging at me, like, oh, just reach out and say something and just say, hey. But that can be well received, but it can also be poorly received,
Yeah.
depending upon the person's, where they are in their head. And I just,
Yeah.
I've just figured over time it's best not to. If somebody messages me and they say, "Hey, can you give me your opinion on this clutch? What do you think about it?" Um, then I'll give them my honest opinion, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be that it's fantastic or it's we've got this going on and this going on and this is what I see. But I don't reach out to anybody because that's not my job.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
sure.
fair.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna police anybody. I'm not gonna police the industry. I'm gonna do my thing and I'm gonna do it to the best of my abilities, but I'm not gonna go out and
Yeah.
wag my finger or anything else.
Is so with the sort of visual appearance that you're looking for in a lot of the
Mhm.
animals, is this informed by like observing like wild examples of their counterparts in the wild, or is it also is it just that, or is it also informed by personal preference? Like how does that fit in?
Wild animals that I see, I definitely keep an eye on all of those that are posting, those that are out in the wild. I always find those posts so fascinating, especially for me because I breed outdoors. Um,
Yeah.
and then obviously, I mean, some of it's going to be personal preference as well. I mean, some of that is honestly going to have is going to play a role. You can't say that it's not, even those that say, oh no,
Yeah.
that doesn't play. Bullshit. That's definitely
Mm-hmm.
going to play a role. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's also a personal. I look for things that are very balanced and symmetrical, and just and I can't really describe it. It's just something that I've done for so long that I'm like, okay, yeah, I really like this, and I don't care for that. This bothers
Mm-hmm.
me. That doesn't bother me. So it's just, I guess I just have developed an eye for it over the years. Now, when also selecting for holdbacks, or whether I'm going to continue with the pairing, what so on and so forth, with the bloodline or whatever, then I'm looking for a lot of different things. I'm looking for hatch. I'm looking for how well did the girl lay? Did she even look like, like I had a girl lay the other day. Well, I had several girls go the other day, and they don't even look like they laid. Like they
Mm-hmm.
didn't,
Yeah.
they're just right back on target. They're not drained. They're not, I mean, they're in great shape. Now, a lot of that has to do with the care that's provided, but some of it also has to do with just the general health of the animal, and the bloodline and this, that, and the other. And so, I mean, they bounce right back. So I'm looking for my girls to bounce right back, for them to not skip a beat and not even look like they laid, you know. I'm looking for, pretty much consistency in the number of eggs that they produce with each clutch. I'm looking for 100% hatch rate, or close to, as possible. I mean, every now and then you can have a bad egg, but and so I'm looking for, when they hatch out, are all the dragons pretty uniform in shape and structure, or are they all over the map?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes into the whole conformation thing. So are they pretty similar in size? Are they teeny tiny out of the egg, or are they good size out of the egg? How do they eat? Do they eat pretty soon? I mean, some of them come out of the egg, and some of my bloodlines come out of the egg like pretty much wanting to eat like right away. And then I have others that take a few days, which is no big deal. As long as once they get going, they're pretty, I like to see pretty even growth rate throughout the clutch, which sometimes you're talking about, 30, 32, 34 babies. So do we have,
Yeah.
a pretty even growth rate, or are we like all over the map? So I don't like to see that all over the map at all.
And
So, and I
yeah,
won't, and so I'll select for holdbacks from groups that I have that, that provide that for me.
that's awesome. So within that, how are you? So you said that sometimes it might be, you might just get a bad egg here and there, and then sometimes it might be a result of like a care flaw, or some sort of like issue in the way that the animal's been cared for and experienced, or something like that. What ways are you using to tell whether it's like, this is something that I can like, that I know is going to be like a more like genetic, something that I can select for? And when do you know that it's like, maybe I need to tweak something in what I'm doing to change this? I hope that question makes
Yeah,
sense.
I think
Maybe.
so. I think I get what you're saying. So, for example, I mean, I pretty much have worked out I've been doing this for so long, it's kind of an autopilot for me. But
Sure.
like, for example, if you notice when I post photos of my eggs, okay, you typically will see them, they're all white. They're solid white. And you know this from your, you know what I'm saying? They're all, I mean, they may have a little bit of dirt on them or something like that, but there's not any windowing, there's not decalcification. Like she had ample calcium to produce those eggs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes a huge difference in the health of the baby. That makes a huge difference in the health of the clutch. So providing proper calcium. So that's one of the big things that I think a lot of people um, don't realize, fail on. I don't know, but they don't provide proper nutrition for their animals that are going to be producing, and as a result, the babies suffer like before they're
Mm-hmm.
even out of the egg. So
Right.
making sure that the eggs are well calcified and things like that are incredibly important. Making sure that the female is getting the nutrition that she needs while she's gravid. So that makes a big difference. I kind of got a little bit sidetracked in that, but so one thing, so kind of going back a little bit, if I have a girl that is, she'll produce like 3 eggs, on
Mm-hmm.
one clutch, and then she pairs up again and she produces 5 eggs or something like that. That's not a
Mm-hmm.
pairing that I really want to move forward with in a bearded
Mm-hmm.
dragon,
Yeah.
So you know, so I look for things like that. I'm looking for, sometimes you just have a infertile clutch, or, your timing was off on pairing them up or whatever. I mean, that's not her problem. But when
Mhm.
she lays the eggs, were they still, even though they're infertile, do they still look good? Or does it
Yeah.
look like you have a calcium problem? You know what I'm saying? So, I
Yeah.
mean, people really need to spend some time evaluating that. I think pay a little bit more attention to that. But anyway, got
Right.
a little sidetracked. You can.
That's okay.
No.
That's okay. Well, so because I think that was right on
Okay.
track. But because one of the things that uh, so I with my Euros and stuff, sometimes you'll see fairly big changes from like one year to the next. So
Mhm.
just as an example, the Moroccan Euromastics that I was talking about, who has a clutch in the incubator right now, um, she's laid for like the last, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years, something like that. I usually try to give them years off here,
Right.
maybe every 2 years or a year off, that kind of thing. But um, sometimes what I've noticed is like, let's say she'll lay a clutch of 18 eggs, right? All of it, 17 out of 18 hatched. They all look great. Everybody's happy. Everybody's healthy, kicking ass. And then maybe the next year I give her a year off. And then third year she lays eggs again. Sometimes they'll lay actually a smaller clutch after that year off.
Right.
Like she'll lay
Mhm.
12 instead of
Mhm.
instead of 18 or something like that. And sometimes it's fewer eggs, but man, those babies come out like just flexing, just jacked.
Right.
And it's like that's that's where it's like for me anyway, I feel like it's hard for me to determine, okay, is this purely due to the year off? Like why was it fewer eggs after a year off than the year previous, right? If that clutch of 18, the babies all hatched out, were healthy, were ready to rock and roll, they just hatched out at a smaller size, but they still achieved like the same adult size as their,
Mhm.
a little bit later counterparts that hatched out a little more jacked and a little more vigorous. And so one of the struggles that I've been trying to refine a little bit more, which is partly why I was asking about this topic, is that um, I'm finding it a little bit difficult personally to distinguish between this is something that I could address through a care method, like or is this something that's like more about the specific animal,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I don't have any good I at least at the moment I don't have a lot of great ideas in my head about how to differentiate between those two circumstances.
Right. So in your case, what you're talking about is literally just the difference between a few eggs, and you're talking about babies that are still healthy in both circumstances, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I don't think there's any. I don't personally, like, I wouldn't sit there and try to evaluate that and beat it to death, because there's so many variables that go into play
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
what an animal produces and how many eggs she produces and so on and so forth. So when I was using the example of a bearded dragon laying 5 eggs, I'm talking about a girl that repeatedly lays 3 or 5 eggs, not 30 eggs or 20 eggs. You see what I'm saying? So that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
If she's laying between, one time she lays 26 and the next time she lays 30, that's fine. Like, I mean, they typically are pretty consistent, but and a lot of times they're like right on the nose. But
Mhm.
that doesn't bother me. But you still have to take in cap you have to keep in mind that there are so many variables. What was their nutrition like? Was there a slight change in their nutrition? Was there a slight change in her nutrition just prior to becoming gravid, just prior to you pairing them? Was the winter harder for them? There's like, was she stressed out because there was some sort of environmental change? There's like, was she introduced to a new male? Was this a new mate for her? So this is a male that she wasn't accustomed to. And so maybe her stress level was a little higher, or whatever. I mean, there's all these variables, and we always try to like pinpoint exactly what it is, like what is that one thing. And that oftentimes just it's often there's multiple things that cause these variances, but what you're talking about is two healthy sets of circumstances. You're not talking about, like, I see people posting photos of eggs that are, I know right out of the bat are not going to make it. I'm like, that they're not going to make it. Those they held them too long, they held the clutch too long. You need to be evaluating, why did she hold these eggs so long? She was not provided the proper place to lay. Like, something is off. She was either dehydrated and so she wasn't able to lay, or she didn't feel comfortable, with the space that she was provided. You didn't realize the signs, whatever. So that's when you really have to sit down and start evaluating, like, what's going on here. And of course, if an animal holds eggs too long, what happens? A lot of times the eggs will die. So because she held them too long, they'll, if they hold them too long, they go bad. So those are the circumstances that you need to be like nitpicking it apart and finding out what's going on. Why do I have sometimes newer breeders will post that, their eggs have the little stars on them, and they think that's really cool. And it is cool looking. It really is. It looks like little star pattern on them. But that is, in that particular set of circumstances, the girl could have used a little bit more calcium. It's not horrible, but she could have used a little bit more calcium. And then in other circumstances, you see them and they're just very, very, the eggs are very, very thin, which puts the female at risk because the eggs are more likely to rupture. You're drawing calcium from her that she obviously didn't have reserves for. And then, it's a disservice to the babies that are incubating too. So, that's when you really need to be going, okay, what happened here? And a lot of times it's not just one single cause. It's usually a multiple things.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying I might be getting a little bit neurotic about.
Did I say that?
You gotta loosen up. Just chill.
You know what,
man.
Roy, I'm in a hoodie. You're in this hat jacket combo. I feel like I'm a lot more chill
As
than
somebody who has a tendency towards being a perfectionist and wanting to know the why before everything, why behind everything, I get it, but that also puts me in a position to be able to tell you need to chill out.
All right.
Because I'm the same way, and over the years I've become less, neurotic about it. I'm not quite as I'm like, okay, some things just are, so.
Yeah, that's
well
I actually I appreciate that quite a bit. Actually, it's very helpful. So another aspect of your work is that you do more than just bearded dragons, right? So you have a huge swath of stuff that you work with down there. And so I'm kind of curious about how, if at all, some of the man, I feel like I'm doing a really poor job of structuring this question, even in my own mind. Maybe, Roy, can I pass this off to you and say, can you ask a question? Because I feel like my brain is
yeah. Well,
not moving right.
Maybe just to begin, could you tell us about some of the other species you're working with, just to start from there, and then we can kind of move further.
So, I have Ackies. So we did have the large monitors, the lace monitors. We had Spencers, and we had Croc monitors at one time. But this obviously we're in Florida, so potentially those could be banned at a later date. I enjoyed working with them, but they didn't really fit, our what we're trying to do. So we actually don't work with those any longer. Those were sold last year. But I did keep the Ackies. I like everything in that size range. I seem to have this anything that's the size of like the banana pectinata, the Ackies, the bearded dragons. They're all kind of within that same range of size, and that seems to be what I have a tendency to gravitate towards. So so I have the Ackies, the banana pectinata. I got those as babies because I like to grow everything up myself. So I bought those in 2019. So they're coming up on 4 years of age. So I did produce one clutch last year, but I'm hoping to produce obviously more this year since my girls are pretty much matured at this point. So I have 6 girls. I have 4.6 with the bananas. And then we have the blue tongues, which I enjoy. I've been keeping those since 2017. So, nice. And then we acquired some others this past year. So those are a lot of fun and I enjoy them. And again, about the size of a bearded dragon. So
good
um,
medium-sized animal.
yeah. And then we have crested geckos. So we work on those. The crested geckos, I honestly like, for the most part, those we have the Xanthic project, but I exported excuse me. I exported all of the visuals that we produced. And then I also have I have a number of pet store accounts, obviously, Bearded Dragons. So
Right.
those usually go to my pet store accounts. So,
Yeah.
and it's a time issue too, you know. I mean, I can only list so much online. So I have a lot of stuff
Oh
that
yeah.
never is not listed, obviously. Um, so yeah, so we have them, and then the anoles, which we have quite a few that hopefully will prove out some new mutations this coming year. So we've been working on that. That's primarily Ron's baby. So
Mm-hmm.
I help with egg collection and tracking all of it and charting everybody and all that stuff. But that's pretty much, you know, that's a little bit more his area. And obviously I, you know, handle all the dragons. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Is- And so I think one of the things I wanted to get at with that is, are there ways in which the like the sort of non-dragon stuff that you guys work with informs the dragons or vice versa? Like I mean, I imagine there would be overlaps. I know there's overlaps in care and things like that too, but in terms of systemization or in terms of like concepts of development and the ways you're thinking about pushing a project forward, do those things overlap between the dragons and the other stuff and back and forth?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, like, we're not picking the species that we work with, typically, not all the time, obviously, but they typically fall within like a certain umbrella. You know, they all have
Mm-hmm.
approximately the same cold and heat tolerances. And oh, yeah, I have the frilled dragons too that I'm growing up that I got this past year. So
Awesome.
I
Yeah,
always wanted those. So yeah, so I
they're
have 20
fun.
of those that I'm growing up, and then I'll, you know, select, you know, several pairs to keep out of that. So I'm very excited about that. But yeah, they usually fall within a similar parameter. So it is honestly best in to have kind of to not have 800 million different systems. That is a
Mm-hmm.
pain in the rear end. And the fewer systems that you have, the better off you be. And the easier it is to maintain and just be able to, you know, to function. So, you know, a lot of them are on the same or on a similar diet or on similar cycles, this, that, and the other. So, obviously, I work with a lot of Australian species. That's seems to be the one that I really gravitates towards. So yeah, a lot of times they're on kind of a similar system. So our blue
Yeah.
tongues, a lot of our blue tongues are in the same types of enclosures, believe it or not, as my bearded dragons.
Mm-hmm.
So they have
Mm.
huge, you
Ah,
know, 4x4 enclosures. With ramps that I actually go up and bask on, which is, you know, pretty interesting. So, and then
Yeah.
we do have a lower system too that we have some of them in as well. But
yeah.
Very cool.
And yeah, that's extremely cool stuff. And especially like I feel like the outdoor side of what you guys do is so intriguing because I know there's always that trope that people say it's like, oh, they're keeping them outdoors. It must be easier. It's fine. It's easy when you're keeping them outdoors,
it's
but
so
that's
much
total
harder.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah. So there's pluses and there's, you know, just like anything else, you know, we've talked about
Yeah.
it already. There's good things and there's, you know, you write your little list. There's great things about this, there's not so great things about this. So um indoor keeping, you're able to manipulate and produce kind of like this perpetual spring, you know, where it's always spring, or you can manipulate and have like 4 seasons with the same species. I can't do that. So my season is like pretty much right on, like true to whatever nature decides. So you know, my season typically for the bearded dragon starts a little bit later than everybody else's. My season
Mm-hmm.
for the blue tongues is later than everybody else's. Everybody is like having litters born, and you know, and then like 2 months later, I'm like, oh, so you know, I run behind.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reliant upon, you know, whatever happens. So if we have a really cold winter, then they may start producing a little bit later. Um, So there's so many different variables because nature is chaos. And obviously Ron has been keeping outdoors for many, many years. That's most of his experience, with his career. For me, I started outdoor keeping 4 years ago, and I'm not going to lie, the first year it scared the crap out of me. I mean, it really,
Yeah.
as a control freak, as a perfectionist, as somebody who doesn't want to make a mistake and doesn't want to mess up and doesn't want to hurt, have anything happen. And I'm very proactive and he's reactive. So that creates some interesting conversations sometimes. That was tough. That was really tough. It was just kind of like, are you sure that the systems are okay, that we're good, and that it can go down to 40 and there's not going to be any problem? Are you sure we can go down to 32 and it's going to be all right? Is it, I mean, it was just like, so learning that, and I've learned more in the last 4 years about weather than I did in the first 46 of my life. So I mean, it's crazy. So I look at weather completely different than I did before I started doing this outdoors. So, I feel the sting in the air that before maybe I didn't pay as much attention to. I pay attention to what's going on with the rain cycles. Are we getting too much rain? Are we not getting enough rain? Do I need to put shields up? Do I need to take shields down? I mean, there's like you're constantly turning the dials. Everybody thinks, oh, number one, okay, so not everybody, but some people are of the opinion that it can't be done in Florida because it's too humid. So that's one thing I run across. And I'm like, okay, well, I've been doing it for years and it works great. So, they need to have water. Number two is that they think that it's easy. That you just basically, it's a set it and forget it. And it is not at all. So we're constantly tweaking the dials. Last tonight before the podcast, we actually decided kind of last minute to, we use 6 mil plastics during the winter to create like a greenhouse effect. And so we decided last minute, because the sting in the air, there seemed to be a little bit more sting than what the forecast was telling us. So we went ahead and covered everybody and pulled all the plastic down. So during the winter time, I cut all the plastics, get it all lined up. And then we always we'll roll it back. So we'll vent it maybe 6, depending upon the weather. So we're venting, we have to make a decision each morning. Are we venting this 1 inch? Are we venting this 6 inches? Are we opening it all the way back to the back of the enclosure where it's like fully exposed to the sun? Like we've had some days that have been in the 80s. So it's rolled back completely. So you're making, and when do you do that? Like we have to be home to be able to do that. So, if you cover it overnight, the sun comes up the next morning, when is that sting gone? So you're like, sometimes we're venting the plastic at 9 a.m. Sometimes we're not doing it till 11 a.m. Sometimes the weather is so garbage that we're not doing it at all that day. So it's just constant. It's highly variable and it's constantly changing, and it's not a set it and forget it. It's not easy. I try to tell people that it's not easy. I have a lot of dragon people that really want to do outdoors, which I think is cool, but I'm like, look, like I'm saying this because I care, not because I'm worried about competition or anything like that. I mean, the only, my competition is me, but I want you to be successful at this. So start with an outdoor enclosure that you're getting the hang of it and kind of getting the gist of it. When you're home, when the weather is good, make sure that you have solid wire bottoms, make sure that they're secure, make sure that you have shade, make sure that you're providing all these things for your animal, and don't do this full time to start off the bat, because something's going to happen. Like it's a lot more involved than people realize. But it's very rewarding. I really enjoy it, and I don't have to clean up adult dragon poop. So that's an awesome thing. So the only ones that I'm cleaning up are the ones that I have inside. So they have huge enclosures. They're able to get exercise. They have ramps, they have branches, they have subfloors. They can get out of the sun if they want to. They have multiple basking areas where there's no competition and everybody can have their own spot. So it really, they do really, really well. They do really well. So
it must make you guys feel so in tune with the animals too, because we talk all the time, not just on the show, but I just feel like all of us here talk all the time in general about just being responsive to your animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And learning how to interpret everything that they do. And I would imagine that in the context in which you're keeping outdoors, it's got to be, and especially with how chaotic you describe the weather being in general. I mean, you have to be not just
Oh, for
responsive to
sure.
everything around. It's got to be this constant interpretation
Yeah.
dance, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll give you like a couple of examples. So we had the forecast was showing that we were going to get some rain, and my animals needed rain. They needed water. So dragons don't have a tendency to drink out of water bowls. They're just kind of like, I'll do the drip cup method for them. For a little bit of water in their bowls. They do have bowls down there. And so some of them will run down and drink. They don't really get like the water that they need that way. So but we kept on getting like these this, oh, it's gonna rain, psych, no it's not. So this kept on happening, and I'm like, all right, so we literally a couple of days ago we had to rain on the dragons with soaker hoses. I literally had to run soaker hoses. Now most people would be like horrified at that idea, but it's no different than somebody putting their animal in the shower. But the dragons will literally, they hauled butt, like they ran up on their ramps and were like lapping up the water. So
Mm-hmm.
so that is a time where I had to take action because they needed to be hydrated. They needed more than just their little water bowl that's sitting down there, because dragons sometimes aren't the smartest cookies in the cookie jar. But they're so dumb sometimes. But anyway, but it's just like, dude, why are you doing that? But anyway, so yeah, we have to do that. And then there are, during the rainy season, of course, that's when all my females are producing anyway, so they need it. But you have to know how much rain is the right amount of rain and how much rain is too much rain. So being in tune to that and going, okay, well, I need them to be able to dry out or have more da 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 da. So then depending upon the time of year, what our highs are, then we'll put partial shields up. So I'll have clear plastic shields and I have solid white shields that we put up, that like those roofing panels.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so we use those. So those are constantly like going on and coming off and going on and coming off. At this time of year, I have the clear ones on so that they magnify to generate more heat. So, and those only cover a certain portion of the enclosure, because I also want them to be able to have access to sun, plenty of access to sun, where they can go and bask and get, and soak up that UV as well. So yeah, you're constantly like tweaking it and doing little things. So um, it's interesting. It's an adventure. But I
Yeah.
mean, my animals
It,
are great. I mean, they feel totally different than when I used to keep them indoors. So they
Mm-hmm.
because they use all of their muscles and they use it in all different ways. I mean, sometimes they're climbing up the sidewall, other times they're on the basking on the branch, and it's just really, sometimes they hang. Like I posted that photo a few days ago with the girl just kind of hanging there, like just literally just like, I was like, whatever. And she stayed there for a while. She was fine. That's just what she wanted to do.
yeah.
So it's pretty interesting. So and so some people will ask me, they'll say, well, do you have any problems with them getting along, or do you have issues with that, and so on and so forth. The most people, for the dragons anyway, when you run into problems with them cohabiting, is not giving them the ability to get away from each other, not
Mm-hmm.
offering multiple places for them to bask. That's the keeper's fault. That's not the dragon's fault. So not offering them places where they can each kind of retreat from each other if they choose to do so, and kind of have their own space. So that's not to say that there's never anything that comes up. And it's funny, usually when there's some sort of a squabble that comes up, it's usually between two females.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah, it's usually between two females. Go figure. But yeah, so I have some females that are just super alpha, and they live by themselves. Um, their mate goes and visits them, and then he goes back with another girl or two. But I have a couple of girls that I don't cohab with anybody. I try not to
Mm-hmm.
keep girls that are real dominant like that, but I have two that I really like them. So I'm like, okay. And they're fine with me. They have no attitude with me. Some people also wonder, how they behave outdoors versus indoors. I had somebody ask me that on Facebook a couple of days ago. And for the most part, they act exactly the same. So my dragons
Interesting.
are fantastic outside. They don't have any attitude problem with me or anything like that. The only exception would be is if I startle them. So,
Oh,
if I all of a sudden come up on them quick, they may flare up and be like, oh, hell no. But they would do that indoors anyway. But that same one that, had an attitude, I can go and pick up 2 seconds later when she realizes I'm not a threat. And then it's just like, oh, it's just her. Um, but, but sometimes when I move them from indoors to outdoors, I'll actually put them like they'll be growing up indoors. Then I'll put them on an indoor outdoor system for a little while. So they kind of get used to being indoors and outdoors, being outside, but not all the time. And then when I put them outdoors, um, I've only had one. I think pretty sure I've only had one dragon that was just like, oh hell no on living outdoors. Like that was just not his thing. He just didn't want to adjust. And I was like, okay. And he was sweet as could be. So I went ahead and pet homed him. But
Oh,
he just didn't want to be outdoors. But that's really unusual, like really unusual. So and most of the time after they get through their initial like, whoa, what just happened? Um and their initial kind of like adjustment period, then they're totally fine. Whatever characteristics they were displaying indoors, they display outdoors. So
it's
very
like
interesting.
when you were mentioning how they feel totally different because they're using all their muscles. It's like they're cross training, like or like you because you have it's just if somebody's keeping it indoors and sort of like a slightly more sterile or like less diverse ranges of motion being used, they're probably just like like, well, I do a lot of pull-ups.
oh, for
Great,
sure.
but
Yeah.
that's it.
No, their grip is completely different than an animal
Mhm.
that's kept
Yeah,
indoors because they use all of their muscles. They're constantly in motion and they're in all different angles. And that's something that's not really easy to replicate indoors unless you have massive indoor enclosures. So,
Right.
so yeah, it is different, but, but I really enjoy it. It's really cool to just go out there and watch everybody. So, but I mean, it's a lot of responsibility too, though. I end up out there this time of year. I'm out there every day walking and looking to make sure, is anybody starting to dig? Where are they digging? With the position of the sun throughout the year, the place that they lay and the enclosure changes throughout the year too. So as they
Mhm.
progress through the season, they'll change their position because they're looking for that specific temperature, 84 degrees. So they may start in the back. Like this time of year, most of my girls are laying in the back. Although one of my girls the other day, she started in the back and she ended up laying in the front corner. I was like, okay.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't have known that unless I was walking around and being observant and checking out and seeing what was going on. But I'm also going in there 3 days a week and I have basically a chart on my phone where I update it. And I'll put all of my enclosures are numbered, so like I have
Mhm.
L1, L5, L7, whatever. So I'll say
Mhm.
L1, Dunner, grab it,
right.
L7, red girl, digging now, so that I
Mhm.
always know, kind of have an update. So I don't ever forget and go, oh, who was it that was digging?
Mhm.
So that it's more efficient. And then that way I don't miss anything. But I go through and feel the girls like 3 days a week at this time of year saying, okay, who's grabbing and what where in the process are they? Are they going to be laying in the next couple of days, or do I have a week on this? Is she ovulating? So I'll make a lot of notes so that way I know. So,
Have you ever let them, or would they hatch out of the ground if you left the eggs, or do
well, I
you
wouldn't
because
do
you
that
pull
because I don't. The enclosures, they're designed so that the animal shouldn't be able to get out. But I mean, you're talking about like a 4-inch baby or whatever, and I
there
and,
you go.
and it, so okay, so a couple of things. Number one, I don't want anything to escape, so
Mhm.
I don't want little baby dragons running around. So
Right.
I'm super anal about that. Number two is that the eggs really don't incubate all that well out there
Mm.
anyway.
Okay.
Like when I've, gone out there a week late or something like that. If I was at Tenley, for example, but I knew that she had
Yeah.
laid or whatever, then it's like kind of like I kind of wonder, and honestly, I never looked into it. I need to ask one of the guys in Australia or something because, or check into it. I honestly haven't done any digging on it, but if she lays 30 eggs,
Mhm.
and how many of those 30 would actually hatch, and how many
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
make it to the surface? Because my experience is here, that's one of the reasons why they have 30 eggs, because they all wouldn't hatch and they all wouldn't make it to the
Right.
surface. So,
Right.
um, but I've never really allowed them to go through, full incubation or whatever. So,
Right.
but
Yeah.
for a higher hatch rate and stuff, I would definitely pull them. And just like I said, being a responsible breeder with the state and everything. So
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I forgot about the possibility of them getting out.
now, yeah, and even like I really we do so many things here. We do so many things to mitigate the weather conditions and stuff. They wouldn't do colonies of them would not do well in Florida anyway. They just wouldn't. We get
Yeah.
so much rain. We get so much rain. So I don't think that they would be a species that would do well here at all. So
Mm-mm.
Right, right,
and
right.
during the freezes and stuff like that, I mean, there's a lot of extra stuff that we provide. So my outdoor adults will actually, we had a couple of nights where we did hit 32. We actually hit 31, and
Mhm.
they did just fine, didn't skip a beat. But we have subfloors, and
Yeah.
and they're covered, and so they're not exposed to the elements that they would be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Man, fascinating. That's such cool stuff. Damn. It's crazy to hear about the immense amount of detail and like rigor that goes into everything that you're having to consider at any given point in time
Mm-hmm.
to keep them outside like that. It's fucking awesome. Um so I want to maybe pass it over to Roy for, I mean, because I've been asking like 90% of the questions, because which is like what I always do. Roy, would you can I throw that pass the ball over to you?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So,
Cool.
I mean, it sounds like, when you were approaching herpetoculture and starting out, you said that you weren't really trying to follow anyone's mold necessarily, and you were more just um going your own way. Seeing it, and it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like to me like you were doing what you would like to see done in herpetoculture to some
Right.
extent,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah. I
so
just wanted to, yeah, provide a healthy pet for somebody was my main
yeah,
goal. Yeah.
yeah, totally. So along those lines, I'm curious, like for aspiring herpetoculturists, like who want to pursue like high quality customer service, high quality reptiles. Do you have any kind of insights that you would offer to somebody who's aspiring towards that and starting out?
Um, I just think that taking it slow and
Mm-hmm.
doing your homework is so important. Everybody gets super excited. I mean, I get excited, I understand. But taking it slow, like my patience with everything, which I'm not always the most patient person, but for this, I was very patient,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that really paid off. So I think that's incredible. That's extremely important. And I mean, the information is out there nowadays. I mean, there's so many podcasts. I mean, you can learn anything now. I mean, you guys, I mean, there's so
Mm-hmm.
many awesome podcasts out there. We can learn
Mm-hmm.
so much information, and you can really kind of gain and learn from others' experiences, and going to the shows and asking questions, just being respectful though, and not asking them when there's, 10 buying customers at their table, but choosing off times to maybe go by and visit breeders and ask questions, intelligent questions. I think that, I was just constantly digging and reading like old forums and stuff, which at the
Mm-hmm.
time was like, fauna and king snake.
Oh yeah.
So, I would go through, and late at night after I had gotten off of work, I would just read through all these forums, and so you saw a lot of drama and a lot of stupid stuff, but I learned a lot
Yeah.
too, because there was a lot of topics that would come up. So, and being able to, um, in your mind, ask questions like, this person is saying this, does this make sense? Here's the argument. Does this make sense? Um, does this mean definitively that this is the only answer out there? Just being able to look at things and kind of critique it and go, okay, well, is this
Mm-hmm.
the only way, or is this, I don't know. kind of got off on a little bit there,
Yeah.
but yeah.
No, that's perfect. That's really great response. I love that. Um, so
Yeah, I think
another
the
question. Oh, sorry. You
oh
go,
no.
Roy. My bad. My bad.
We have such excellent timing just speaking at the same time today.
Yeah, we do. We were feeling it.
But no, yeah, I appreciate that answer. Just like starting at a small scale, like going slow. I think that that's such good advice for this trade, because I see so many people that just dive in headlong and get in over their head almost immediately, and then they're just like, oh my god, what have I done? It's
Yeah,
easy to
and you don't realize you can read everything. You can read everything out there. You can hear people say, "Oh, I started slow," or "Oh, I did
mm-hmm,
this," or whatever. But until you're actually doing it,
mm-hmm,
you don't know. Like it's a totally different ball of wax. And
yep,
by going slow, then you're able to really figure out, because things happen, it's
mm-hmm,
like, oh well, why is this baby doing this, and you have to be able to learn that, and you don't want to learn that with 100 babies doing that. You want to learn it with a couple of babies doing this. um, so smaller mistakes are easier to correct and clean up than bigger mistakes, and bigger
mm-hmm,
mistakes snowball
mm-hmm,
and they make
mm-hmm,
a big
That's
mess. And then you have the huge problem where you do end up with, there's been chit chat lately about, animals not having homes and this, that, and the other. And that really comes from, in my opinion, a lot of that comes from just irresponsibility on the breeder's part.
mm-hmm,
If you don't have the contacts established, if you don't have the reputation, if you don't know what you're doing yet, if you can't hang on to those animals for an indefinite period of time before you can get them homed, because I've said this on another podcast, I'm like, bearded dragons are kind of like a ticking time bomb. They keep on
mm-hmm,
eating, they keep on eating. You have to separate them. They grow, they grow, they grow. So if you don't have established contacts, established accounts that and actually you want to have more accounts than you have animals, um, then you're doing the animals a disservice. And so that's when
mm-hmm,
you start seeing up online, excuse me, where you see animals that are like missing full limbs. Like a toe nip
yeah,
is going to happen. A baby dragon may go after a cricket and miss, and then take out a little
mm-hmm,
toe, and that can happen.
yeah.
That's that can happen. um, and on occasion, you're going to have something that is a little bit more aggressive, but keeping an eye on everything and looking for signs of aggression and stuff like that, until you really get to know what you're doing, then you should be doing that on a small scale, not on a large scale.
right,
So, because that's when you end up with a lot of animals that are not wanted and don't have homes, and there's all this, just they're deformed and weren't given proper nutrition and all this other stuff.
mm-hmm,
So, um, I think it's super important to, and maybe some of that, I mean, I think I carried that with me anyway, but maybe some of that was through a touch of my realization of that early on came from watching my ex-husband,
mm-hmm,
and his
Mm,
choices and what he did, which I didn't agree with.
right,
yeah.
So a touch of that might have come from there, but me just knowing I didn't want to be overwhelmed and I want to learn as much as I possibly can and not be not I don't want anything to suffer because of my irresponsibility, because I was too eager to have, a million of them, or, whatever. I don't know. So,
Yeah, I very much I appreciate that response a lot, because especially the part about the little messes are easier to clean up than bigger messes, because that there's a
so
lot of
true.
wisdom in that, and it's not just about shit.
no,
Yeah,
no. Yeah, for real. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
that's
that's
so true.
that's excellent.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so changing topics ever so slightly, because we're creeping up, right, getting close to 2 hours here. So
Mhm.
if it's okay, I have
Sure.
like maybe two or three remainders, that I
Okay.
and one in particular is one that um I was asking you about before the show, which
Mhm.
is um considering that herpetoculture is like pretty clearly like a male dominated industry. Can you speak a little bit to like what the experience for you has been like as a woman in herpetoculture?
So, yeah, and I really haven't had, I wouldn't say that my experience has been negative. It's just, I really, I don't feel like, I mean, some people go out there, some women have seemed to have had more struggles with it than others. Um, I really haven't had much of an issue with it. I will say initially, especially nowadays, but I mean, nowadays too, I mean, me being this far in, I mean, I've been around for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. So, but I think as a whole, I think the industry is much more accepting of women than they used to be. So initially, I mean, it was kind of a more of a good old boy type of thing where women were maybe not as encouraged, or there was some um, what their capabilities were or whatnot might have
Mm-hmm.
been perhaps looked down upon a bit.
Mhm.
And so there were circumstances where it was just kind of like maybe you're not taken quite as seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't. I really feel that this industry, for the most part, I mean, there's exceptions, and this is going to be in any industry, in any community, in any whatever. That
Mhm.
this industry is actually very, I feel like, in my experiences and those of many people that I've run across and met, that for the most part, that the industry has been very welcoming of everybody. That
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of a industry of, I don't want to say that we're a bunch of misfits, but I mean, we just all come from different walks of life, and we all have this commonality, and so I think we have the ability to be more united than
Mm-hmm.
we are, and I don't.
Yeah.
Um, I think if everybody could kind of set their egos down aside a little
Mm-hmm.
bit and just kind of really try to communicate with each other and not be so quick to react. Um, you know, we all screw up. We all make mistakes. We're all learning our entire lives. None of us are perfect. And I, I don't know. I just think that as a whole, we actually, there's very little, I think that women are pretty well accepted within this industry at this point in time. And that everybody as a whole, no matter what white, no matter what walk of life you come from, I think is pretty accepted as a whole. I think
Mhm.
what shouldn't be accepted is you behaving like an irresponsible asshole. I mean, so you know, somebody that is just, you have, I don't know, every community has their troublemakers and
Mm-hmm.
those that are just, they don't have the industry's interest best at heart, and they are um, selfish. Some people are selfish, but that doesn't matter. I mean, you're going to find that anywhere. It doesn't matter what you do for a living, you're going to see that. So
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I think overall, I'm pretty proud of the industry in general as far as being pretty accepting of everybody that I've seen enter. So unless
Oh,
you're
that's awesome.
disrespectful and unless you're a jerk, then obviously, but
Yeah.
but I'm hoping we can kind of reach a point where we're banding together a little bit and reaching that, and understanding that we're all coming from the same place. We all have a love of
Mm-hmm.
of working with these species, and we all want to continue to do so, and that we should be kind of working together to help each other out. Um, and hopefully that's what I'm hoping for anyway. I think that
Yeah.
we can move more in that direction, but I think there's a lot of that already. I don't think we're doing a
Seems
bad
like,
job.
yeah, it seems like momentum is building in that direction
I think so. And
from what
and
I can
and
tell.
so and yeah, and sometimes you think, oh my God, everything's so negative and da 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 da. But I think a lot of times that comes from people that are really negative, or that they have a lot of derogatory things to say, or they're hateful or whatever. Those are usually the loudest.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't
Mhm.
hear, sometimes beauty is silent, sometimes
Yeah.
the best
Yeah.
of the world remains silent. And so it appears that there's you know, all this, I don't know, whatever toxic garbage going
Mm-hmm.
on, when actually it's probably pretty small. It's just happens to be the loudest. It's the loudest on social media. Like,
Yeah.
you'll notice something, like you'll particularly notice, if you haven't noticed it already, you'll notice it more when we next time you're on social media. when you post something positive and you post something exciting and you post something that is designed to bring everybody together, um, versus when you post something that is bad news or you're ticked off about something, you've had a bad day or something's fallen apart, which one gets more traction?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Or
The
yeah, the
negative
negative
stuff.
ones.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
on social media, it does have a tendency to be, and and we all have a bad day and we get on there and vent, but I try not to vent anymore because I realize sometimes it grows legs when all you were having was like you were just having a bad day,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So
Well
Yeah.
said.
I don't know. I just noticed that. I noticed that a lot of times posts where somebody is complaining about another, they're complaining about something, it just takes on this life of its own and everybody jumps in. But, if there's something that's fantastic, that is very positive, that there's something, something that everybody can learn from in it, that sometimes that just kind of, it seems like that is more frequently ignored. So
Yeah.
Yeah, the
just my 2 cents on that.
algorithms are definitely fueled by outrage a lot of the time, unfortunately.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. Yeah.
Shit, that's a great answer.
And then
I really.
sometimes it's our own, it's our own inner desire to like jump in and vent for the day because we've been frustrated or this, that, and the other. And then, some people are just really prone to
That's what your
drama and
in-person friends are for.
toxicity and, huh? Yeah.
I said that's what your in-person friends are for.
Yeah. 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 For real.
Um, Damn, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
What is the future? This is like maybe a two-part, like a multi-pronged question, but what does the future look like for you? And so that can be obviously like what does the future look like for fairy tale dragons, but also
Mm-hmm.
what do you think the future? I mean, and I don't necessarily mean like can you make some predictions, but I guess do you have any like gut feelings at all about like maybe where herpetoculture as a whole is going, or like what things that we may or may see kind of on the horizon, that things that might change, things that might surprise us or anything like that? So I know it's kind of two separate questions, but that's what I
No, no,
do.
no.
So
So I think for the future of the industry as a whole, I think that's up to each one of us. I think that
Mm.
that's up to each of us um, that are out there and doing our thing every day. It depends on how do we lead, how do we show by example, what do we put forth, what do we put forward, do we put forth a lot of toxic, like, oh my god, the world's coming to an end and everybody is horrible, or do we put forth, some solutions and working together and being responsible about those solutions and trying to find the answers and having some understanding in each other that, all of our lives are different and we all have, different things going on, and that, it's okay to disagree. I think that's one of the biggest things that drives me bonkers is that there seems to be like, this is going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but
yeah, do
is
it.
if I don't forget. Um, yep, I forgot. But
No, oh
but
no.
we just, well, yeah, I did, and it was, but I think that, oh, this is what I was going to say. So we have a tendency to, and I've learned through time, and I used to do it, is thinking that there is only one way to do something, or there's only one right way, and that's my way, or that's the way I was taught, and that's the only way that it works. And that's not true, because we were talking earlier, Phil, about variables. There's oftentimes many
Yeah,
pieces to the puzzle that create a solution. So um, I think we all need to be more open and realizing that there's a lot of different ways to do things, and that communicating without getting all our feathers ruffled and feeling like, that we need to get defensive and so on and so forth, but actually just having a conversation, which sometimes that's difficult on social media, because if I had a bad day and I have a bad attitude and I go and read your post, then I'm
yeah,
obviously, how am I going to take that? My bad
yeah,
day is
yeah,
going to be reflecting in what I read, right? So I'm going to be putting some emotions and stuff that may or may not be there. They're mine. They're not yours. It's not what you were trying to convey. So communication and text can be challenging sometimes. And I think that all of us that are active in the community need to be more aware of that and kind of take the lead and just kind of slow down and ask some questions before we jump the gun and start, ripping each other apart. But I think that if we're able to kind of have conversations, and I think these podcasts are really helpful. And I think more and more people are starting to, I mean, there's a lot of them out there now. And I think a lot of them, such as yourself, are being very responsible about it and putting out a good message that, that we can make some positive changes and kind of learn to work together, because it shouldn't matter if I'm like, I think you guys talked about it actually with Rapashi. You guys were talking about it doesn't matter what you're breeding, if I'm breeding a bearded dragon, or if I'm in the frog community, or if I'm in Uromastyx or whatever. We all have our little cliques or whatever, but we all have the same love. So
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So we all love the reptiles. We all love what we do. We love keeping, and we want to be able to continue to do that. So I think there are going to be some restrictions that come along, that we're going to continue to see some more restrictions. And I'm not opposed to all of them, depending upon how they're rolled out, because some people are responsible and some people are not. So if things are lined up to handle those that are not responsible, then I can't say that I have much of an issue with that, because that needs to be done for everyone. But I don't want overreach either, so all of us want to be able to have the ability to keep things. You don't want to have that taken away. So I mean, there's again, I've learned, balance and everything, everything's about balance. So there should be some rules, and you should be held accountable for certain things, but you don't want that to go too far either. There's certain things that, a 16-year-old shouldn't be able to buy at a show. They just shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? So there's certain things that if somebody's going to buy, that they should have a license for it. And it should be pit tagged. So I mean, there are, it's just keeping it reasonable and not letting it get out of hand. So and if we're all a little calmer about the conversations and a little bit less of the I'm not gonna but actually just being having an intelligent conversation, then I can think that we can come up with more solutions, and it's better on everybody's stress level too. So, but and as far as fairy tale, really, obviously for many, many years, my focus was solely on the bearded dragons, for the most part. And then it was about really kind of finding what I really enjoyed working outside of that. I wanted to work with a lot of species many years ago, but because I was working full time, because I had my daughter, because, I mean, just life in general, the puzzle pieces didn't fit for me to have a lot of different species. Like, it just would have been irresponsible, and it would have been too much for me to handle. So I didn't really explore any of the others until obviously, I was completely full time. And Rod and I work really well together because we kind of like fill in the gaps for each other. So I'm very proactive and he's very reactive, which means that we lock horns, but sometimes, but we also, but that's okay though. But we're able to like punch holes in each other's thoughts and go, and make sure that our ideas are unassailable, that we're on target and that we're not missing anything. And so, we balance each other really, really well. So he's amazing at designing systems. I'm very detail oriented, extremely detail oriented. So I'm able to pick out things that maybe he misses. But he's able to design some amazing systems. And, of course, he's like Encyclopedia Britannica walking around here, because if you ask him what a species is, he can tell you the common name, the scientific name, where it's from, what type of environment it lives in, how it should be set up, what I mean, he just goes, rolls on and on and on. So that is not my super, I don't have that. But anyway, so, and we found some, eventually we have some projects that we kind of work on together that are fun. But yeah, so I think so. What I've been working towards is really the only thing that I really have is I'll eventually get to a place where I've already cut back some now, but I won't produce as many dragons as I have the last couple of years because that wasn't so fun. Um,
Mm,
I like the smaller numbers. I like the conversations with, the kid that's been saving his allowance for 3 years. I like the
yeah,
conversation with the up and coming breeder that's done their homework, that has a few intelligent questions. You know, that's what I like. And I love the species, and I'll never get out of the species. So I'll always keep some until, I'm not here anymore. Um,
yeah,
so I'll always have them, and I'll breed them for as long as I possibly can. Um, but we are, I really enjoy like the blue tongues. My blue tongue colony is grown. Um, and the bananas are, have now reached adulthood. And so there's a lot of exciting things that are
yeah,
coming. So I'll be offering more variety. Basically, you'll just see things, more on Fairy Tales table than we have in the past. There'll be more species. um, but as far as like my retail customer, they're not going to notice the drop in the
Mm-hmm.
number of dragons I'm producing. The only ones that are going to notice are, my pet store accounts. Those are
Right.
the only
yeah.
ones that'll pick that up. So but
That makes
but they'll
sense.
have other things that I'm offering them, and so
Excellent. Yeah,
yeah.
hell yeah, that's great. Wonderful stuff. Well, definitely look forward to seeing what the future holds for you guys and what you're up to in general. It's going to be, and
Yeah.
hopefully we can all meet eventually one day in
I know we
person.
all got to hang
Finally,
out.
Yeah, for real.
When is
Yeah,
this gonna happen?
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know. No, it's crazy to think that there's so many people who we know who we end up developing cool friendships with, and then just it's like I've never met these people in person. It's totally bizarre.
I
Um,
mean, there's a couple of people I talk to almost every day to every day that I've never met in
yeah,
person.
Oh
And
yeah,
then I've been
same.
doing
that's
that for years. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
yeah,
It's,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but
It's
they're some of my
bananas.
best friends.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I
Or
mean, they're some of my best friends out there, and I've never met them in person. It's so weird to think
that's
that.
so surreal, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
surreal.
really.
Yeah.
Um,
And amazing.
well, so yes, super amazing, super weird. It's like Roy and I have never met in person to this day. It's
This is
totally
the
trippy.
year.
Wonder how long it's
Exactly. That is weird.
this is the year. This is the year. Yeah, no, this has got to be the year. It is weird. Um, we have one kind of final question. You might know the question that we ask. It's like the one we ask at the end of every show. Roy, do you want to do the
Yeah,
honors on that bad
sure.
boy?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the question is why herpetoculture? And that could mean why do you do it? Why do we do it? Why does it matter? Why herpetoculture?
I think it's another way to connect with people. So, and to share something that you care about and that you love, and you can share it with others that have the same passion. So, um, I think that's a big part of it. Is that connection with others and being able to. Um, I mean, there's so many, like we were just talking about. There's all these friendships that were formed from
Mhm.
being in this business. I have friends that literally bought a dragon as a pet that are friends, not industry people, but they just bought a bearded dragon. And I talk to them almost every day. I mean, that's incredible, so
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
that connection with others and having something that you can share. And even if you come from a different walk of even if you come from a totally different life, and you come from a totally different set of circumstances, and you're not in the same industry as far as what you do for a living, because what we do for a living is not all that we are. So I mean, I don't know, I just think it's really cool. You just end up I've met so many amazing people. I met a lot of amazing people. Like I said, we were talking about the jewelry industry. You meet all these
Mhm.
different people, and that do all these different things for a living, and it's an ability you have the ability to connect with others, and this industry offers that same thing. So I think that's why it was such a fit for me. Is that and then I love the animals, so it's just kind of a win-win. So
Yeah. Awesome.
Love that.
That's a
Yeah.
great answer. I love it. Yeah. We've had such like a diversity of responses to that particular question. Um, and it
oh, and I
never
could
ceases
answer
to
like, yeah, you could take it from a different angle and talk all night long. You could go another 3 hours,
Totally.
by taking it from all the
yeah,
different angles as far as why,
Hmm.
so
yeah,
that's just the first
yeah.
one
It's
that
so
popped up in my head based on how our conversation
Yeah.
went for the evening. That's just kind of what's on the mind. So
I like that. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to have you back on at some point in the future if that's okay with you,
mhm.
so that way we
Yeah,
can
sure.
maybe that conversation will flavor a different answer to the same question. That might
Yeah.
be
Exactly.
interesting. Yeah,
Definitely.
it'd be
Yep.
cool. Um, well, so
Awesome.
can you we
I'll hit
gotta
the
before we
stop
hit the end
recording. Oh yeah, yeah.
we,
Before we do
not
that.
yet. We gotta do before we hit the end recording, we gotta do like where everybody can find
Yes.
where everybody can find you on the socials and stuff, Heather.
Best way to reach out to me is on Instagram or
Hmm.
on Facebook for Fairy Tale Dragons, TAIL. And that's the easiest way to reach me. Um, my website right now, I mean, it's there, but because it's out of season, we're out of season right now. There's no activity on it. Um, and like I don't like emails. I'm not an email person. I hate emails. Maybe it's because it's so full of junk at this point in time that it's just
Hmm.
ridiculous. It doesn't matter. It just, you get lob. It's much easier to filter through and everything
Hmm.
and talk to people, I think, a lot of times, and private message and whatnot.
Yeah.
I do answer emails, but I'm just slower with them. And then so yeah, and then following, I post to them fairly frequently, so everybody's kind of, so you're able to kind of see what I have got going on, what's happening, so on and so forth. I post updates as baby season kind of begins to ramp up, so people can see when I'm listing and all of that fun stuff, what projects I have. So
Sweet.
Sounds great. We'll have show
Ex-
notes, links in the show notes for all of our listeners to all those things.
mhm. Yep. All right, thanks
Excellent.
guys.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so
Um,
much. Until next time.
Roy, you're gonna hit the yeah, hang
I'm
on, you're gonna
doing
hit
it.
the
I'm
stop
doing it.
recording.
I'm gonna hit the stop. Okay, you guys ready? You ready? Okay, here it goes.